70,000 years ago, you almost didn't exist. Not just you, personally, but every single human being. At one point, the entire species was reduced to just a few thousand stragglers, clinging to life in scattered pockets of Africa. For context, that's fewer people than fit in a modern football stadium. Imagine all of humanity shoved into the bleachers, and then imagine half of them starving. This is how close we came to disappearing forever. You wake up, not in a bed, not even in a hut, but on a rough patch of ground under a sky that hasn't yet been ruined. The air smells of damp earth. Your family huddles around you, swatting at insects, because there is no bug spray. There's not even soap. The world feels bigger than it does today, and emptier. No skyscrapers, no buzzing highways, not even a decent stone wall. Just endless grasslands and forests, punctuated by the occasional roar of something that would very much like to eat you. And you? You're not exactly at the top of the food chain. You're small, vulnerable, and armed with little more than sharp rocks and stubbornness. Saber-toothed cats, hyenas the size of bears, and actual bears all lurk nearby. Every night, as you close your eyes, you do so with the quiet hope that nothing with teeth decides you look tasty. The climate is unstable. Ice creeps south from the poles, turning once fertile plains into brittle, frozen tundra. Rains fail for seasons at a time. Crops? You don't have them yet. Agriculture is still tens of thousands of years away. Your pantry is whatever roots you dig up and whatever unlucky antelope the group manages to chase to exhaustion. And the group matters. You don't survive alone. The humans of your little band live in numbers so small it would shock a modern mind. Maybe 20 or 30 at most. Every person matters. The skilled hunter, the grandmother with knowledge of plants, the children who represent your fragile future. Still, life has a rhythm. Forage. Stay alive. Repeat. Fire is your most advanced technology, and you guard it like treasure. Without it, you're just another mammal hoping the night doesn't kill you. This is the world before it all goes wrong. Before the sky darkens. Before the ash falls. Before the species comes so close to extinction that, even today, geneticists can see the scars in your DNA. But don't worry. It only gets worse. It starts quietly. A tremor under your feet, a sound like distant thunder that doesn't stop. You look around, confused, wondering if maybe the Earth itself has decided it's had enough of you. Spoiler, it has. Thousands of miles away, in what's now Indonesia, the Toba supervolcano is preparing to rewrite history. You don't know its name, and you never will. All you know is that one morning, the sun seems a little weaker, the horizon a little darker, and then, boom. The eruption is not a volcano the way modern people imagine them. This isn't tourists snapping pictures of lava flowing at a safe distance. This is an explosion so violent that 2,800 cubic kilometers of ash and rock are blasted into the sky. If that number means nothing to you, here's the translation. It's enough material to bury entire continents. Think of a mushroom cloud taller than Everest, wider than countries, blotting out the sun. The sound alone would have been heard for thousands of miles. And if you were anywhere nearby, congratulations. You and your entire family are now part of the geological record. Ash, rock, fire, instant fossil material. But even if you were lucky enough to be far away, the sky above you soon changes. Day turns to a murky twilight. The sun becomes a faint disk behind a thick veil of ash. Nights grow colder. Food grows scarcer. You can't plant crops because, again, you don't know what crops are. You can't hunt effectively because the animals are dying too. Your lungs burn with the acrid taste of ash that drifts across continents. Rivers clog with silt. Plants wither. This is what scientists politely call a volcanic winter. You'd call it the slow death of everything you rely on. And the numbers drop. Humans, already a fragile species scratching out a living, are reduced to a few thousand survivors. Imagine the entire human population condensed to the size of a small town, scattered across the vast emptiness of Africa. If one bad hunt, one bad drought, one unlucky predator encounter wipes out your group, that's it. Game over. No Netflix documentaries about ancient humans, because you never make it past the ice age. But somehow, against odds that make lottery tickets look generous, you survive. Not comfortably. Not happily. Just survive. Eating whatever roots or insects you can find. Sticking close to fire. Watching the sky and wondering if the sun will ever come back. And for a long time, it doesn't. The volcanic winter lasts for years. Maybe decades. Generations live and die under dim, cold skies. Your children grow up in a world that feels cursed, with no idea whether the warmth will ever return. This is the bottleneck moment. The razor's edge. Humanity balanced on extinction, wobbling, teetering, almost ready to topple over. But you cling to life. Because apparently, you're just stubborn enough not to die. Somehow you survive. Not because you're clever. Not because you're lucky. Not even because the universe particularly cares about you. You survive because, against every shred of probability, a few humans cling to life while the rest vanish. The sun returns eventually, weakly at first, a pale disk through lingering ash, reminding you that, yes, the world still exists and you're still in it. The rains come back. Plants tentatively sprout. Animals return, or at least, those that weren't wiped out entirely. And you, along with a few other humans who didn't succumb to cold, hunger, or predators, keep walking, foraging, hunting, enduring. Congratulations. Humanity survives, by the skin of its teeth. By geneticists' later calculations, your ancestors number in the mere thousands. That's it. A species reduced to the equivalent of a single crowded high school hallway. And you, well, you are one of the lucky ones, though you won't know that. Luck doesn't announce itself. Luck quietly lets you wake up another day. The bottleneck is brutal. Every birth, every death, every choice matters more than it ever has. Families merge. Groups band together. Some lineages die out. Others, by accident or stubbornness, persist. And this small gene pool leaves its mark on you, thousands of generations later. Subtle quirks, vulnerabilities, traits you carry today as if some cosmic joke is still playing with you. Life is still hard. Cold nights, unreliable food, and terrifying predators haven't gone anywhere. You've just learned how to stretch hope thinner than ever before. But that thin hope is enough. You invent new strategies. Maybe a better fire pit. Maybe a trap for catching animals that would have otherwise laughed at your primitive weapons. Every little innovation increases your odds of surviving another year. And you do. Somehow, you keep going. The world itself begins to heal. Ash settles, skies clear, forests grow back. Animals repopulate. And humans, tiny, fragile, but stubborn, expand again. Population slowly creeps upward, branching out into areas that had been empty for generations. You and your few thousand fellow survivors, though you cannot see it, become the ancestors of everyone reading this story. Everyone alive today owes their existence to the quiet endurance of people who, at the time, could barely imagine tomorrow. But survival leaves scars. Genetic diversity is painfully low. Traits that would have been lost in a larger population now dominate. You carry forward the mark of the bottleneck in your DNA, a reminder that once, not long ago in geological terms, humans almost didn't make it. And yet, life goes on. You adapt. You endure. You persist. Maybe you discover a new hunting ground. Maybe you find a reliable water source. Every small victory counts. Every day survived is a triumph over a world that had tried to erase you. So, you wake up, glance at the slightly brighter sky, and carry on. The sun warms your back. Your children laugh. You forget for a moment that you were almost extinct. And in this brief lapse, the species gains another chance. Another shot at tomorrow. But here's the kicker. This wasn't the last time humans would flirt with extinction. Not by a long shot. The world still holds disasters waiting in the wings. And yet, somehow, you, humanity, keep turning up, blinking in the light and carrying on. You wake to a sky the color of faded stone, the air sharp with cold that bites at your lungs. No alarm clocks, no coffee, no snooze button. Just the sound of grass brushing against your face and the distant howl of something you definitely do not want to meet for breakfast. Your eyes adjust. A thin layer of dew clings to everything: rocks, roots, and the coarse hair of a nearby animal you thought had died in the night. Lucky guess, it didn't. The wind carries the smell of damp earth, sweat, and the faint tang of fear. Welcome to another day in the savannah. There is no breakfast waiting for you. There is no fridge, no cereal, no avocado toast. The meal comes from either your ingenuity or the mercy of a frightened antelope. You roll a pebble in your hand, imagining it as a knife, a spear, a tool to manipulate the universe, or at least to pry the stubborn roots from the soil. Small victories count. You move silently through the tall grass. Every step is a negotiation with the ecosystem. A snapped twig might mean dinner. Or death. Depends on which side of the stick luck lands. The shadows stretch long in the morning sun, and the scent of water nearby tells you the river is awake, gurgling its way toward survival. Your group stirs behind you. Small, scattered, vital. Every person plays a role: the hunter with nerves of steel, the grandmother who knows which berries are edible and which will kill you, the children who squabble but represent the species' stubborn determination to keep going. You exchange no words, yet communication exists. Looks, gestures, silent understandings. Language, rudimentary as it is, can't capture all the nuances of surviving another day. A rustle nearby. You freeze. The world is alive with predators, some hidden, some bold. Hyenas pad across the clearing, and you briefly wonder if they have more strategic sense than your entire group combined. Probably. The air hums with tension, but it's also oddly routine. Fear has a rhythm here, like a heartbeat you've learned to dance around. Hunting begins. Tools are crude, but in this small world, they are everything. Sharp stones, carved sticks, and your patience. You stalk quietly, eyes scanning for motion. Every animal is both dinner and potential danger. A misstep could be fatal. A startled prey might kick, a predator might miscalculate. Life is a constant balance of aggression and restraint. And yet, there are moments of absurdity. A monkey chatters overhead, seemingly mocking your careful movements. You wonder if evolution includes a sense of humor. Maybe it does, because the universe seems to enjoy watching humans tiptoe through peril. By midday, the sun beats down. Sweat and dust mingle into a gritty layer on your skin. Hunger gnaws at the edges of your focus. You catch a small lizard, your reward for patience and stubbornness. It's not much, but it's food. And in this world, food, any food, is survival disguised as luck. The wind shifts. You smell smoke somewhere in the distance, perhaps a fire lit by another group of humans, or perhaps something far more dangerous. You shrug. Today's problem, like every day, is keeping your small, fragile group alive until the next sunrise. No grand plans. No long-term strategy. Just the stubborn insistence that you will not yet vanish from the planet. Night approaches. Shadows lengthen. The savannah becomes quieter, except for the occasional rustle that reminds you of your place in the food chain. Your group huddles near a small fire, sharing warmth, stories, and a brief illusion of security. You eat, rest, and silently prepare for tomorrow. Tomorrow will be similar. Slightly colder, slightly hungrier, slightly more terrifying. But tomorrow at least you survive. And tomorrow will come, because survival above all else is stubbornness dressed as routine. You've just survived the morning. Congratulations. That, in this world, counts as a minor victory. But the moment you relax, the savannah reminds you exactly who's in charge. Spoiler, it isn't you. Predators are everywhere. Lions stalk the tall grass like silent judges, measuring your worth in calories. Hyenas lurk at the edges, waiting for mistakes or misfortune to do the work for them. Saber-toothed cats, massive, terrifying, and biologically efficient, prowl in shadows, their eyes glinting like polished stones. And if you're unlucky, a pack of wolves or a rogue bear wanders through, curious enough to see if humans taste as good as the stories suggest. You learn quickly that fear is both your companion and your weapon. You move quietly, exaggerate your height with branches, make yourself seem larger than life. You whisper warnings to your group, a flick of the tail, a subtle gesture. Every sound, every scent could betray you. Even the smell of cooking fires carries risk, Hungry noses follow it. Hunting in this environment is absurdly dangerous. A small misstep, a poorly aimed spear, and suddenly you're not the hunter anymore. You're dinner. And you realize that the rules of survival aren't fair, nor do they have a moral compass. A miscalculated leap from a rock could kill you. A startled deer could kick you into a thorn bush. The world is full of small, humiliating ways to die, and large, dramatic ones too. Other humans are threats as well. Tribal rivalries aren't just about land, they're about survival. Encounters with strangers can lead to cooperation, trade, or death. You never know which until the moment presents itself. And honestly, life is easier when you just assume the worst. Optimism is a luxury that can get you eaten. You start noticing patterns. Predators follow migration paths. Certain rivers harbor crocodiles and hippos that make wading a questionable idea. At night, the roar of big cats is not a lullaby. It's a reminder that your every movement is being judged. Sleep is a dangerous game. You doze lightly, one ear tuned to the breeze, every rustle a potential threat. Dark humor becomes your armor. You joke quietly to yourself, maybe if I run fast enough, I'll convince the lion I'm actually dinner for someone else. It doesn't make you less terrified, but it makes the day tolerable. Water sources are another gamble. The nearest river looks serene, but predators lie in wait. Crocodiles and lurking snakes have an uncanny sense for timing, especially when you're desperate. Drink too quickly and you might choke, or worse. Avoid the river and dehydration sets in. Every choice is a trade-off, and sometimes the world laughs at your indecision. You notice subtle signs of predator intelligence: tracks, scat, scratches. They are learning as much about you as you about them. Survival becomes a game of observation and timing. You and your small band are constantly reading, reacting, adapting. And if luck is on your side, you live another day. By sunset, your heart is still pounding. You've survived encounters with lions, hyenas, and potentially hostile humans. Your group gathers in a semicircle around a small fire, sharing the barest comfort that you're still alive. Every scar, every close call, reminds you that existence is a series of narrow escapes. Sleep comes fitfully. You dream of teeth and claws, of shadows taller than mountains, of a world that doesn't pause to accommodate you. And yet you wake again. Because in this ancient savanna, the only constant is danger, and the stubborn human refusal to vanish quietly. You survive another day, but it isn't just your own life at stake. Out here, survival is a group project, whether you like it or not. Every human in your band plays a role, whether they realize it or not, and you quickly learn that one weak link can endanger everyone. Look around. There's the hunter who seems perpetually annoyed by everything. A short temper and keen eyes, perfect for spotting prey, terrible for diplomacy. Then the grandmother, stooped and wrinkled, whose knowledge of plants, berries, and roots is the difference between dinner and starvation. She knows which leaves will kill you and which will heal you. And she does it without fanfare, a quiet goddess of survival. Children are both your future and your constant headache. They wander, they poke things they shouldn't, and sometimes they scream at the exact wrong moment. But you can't hate them. Not really. Every one of them is a reminder that humanity refuses to die quietly. You feed them, protect them, and sometimes hope they inherit more luck than brains. Communication is limited but crucial. Words are basic. Gestures, grunts, and facial expressions fill in the gaps. A subtle raise of an eyebrow can mean, stay still. A slight point toward the tall grass means, predator. And you, if you've learned anything, read these signs as easily as the tracks of a passing animal. Misreading one could cost you dearly. Decision-making is communal. When to move, where to hunt, when to hide, every choice is weighed against risk and resource availability. Arguments flare, mostly silently, because shouting draws unwanted attention. The alpha, or maybe just the loudest, has influence, but nobody is immune to the collective necessity of survival. Even the cleverest hunter can be overruled if the group decides the risk isn't worth it. Rituals emerge, subtle and practical. Fire tends to be central, not just for warmth and cooking, but for signaling, warding off predators, and marking territory. Food is shared reluctantly, grudgingly, or generously depending on the day and mood. Cooperation is survival. Selfishness is a slow death. You notice that humans, even in these tiny bands, have a natural instinct for balance. Each person's strengths fill another's weaknesses. And yet, conflict is inevitable. Tensions bubble over small things. A stolen piece of meat, a misinterpreted gesture, a child wandering too close to danger. Arguments are brief, practical. They are never about morality, they are about efficiency and survival. You quickly learn to pick your battles. Losing one today might mean winning the chance to survive tomorrow. Trust is currency. You must trust the hunter to bring food, the grandmother to know plants, the group to watch your back at night. But trust is fragile. One misstep, one betrayal, and the group's delicate balance is at risk. Survival isn't glamorous. It's negotiation, compromise, and constant vigilance. Even humor plays a role. Dry, subtle jokes help the group cope with constant fear and deprivation. A sarcastic remark about a failed hunt or a child's ridiculous curiosity is not just entertainment, it's a psychological lifeline. Laughter, quiet and fleeting, keeps morale just high enough to face the next day. By the end of the day, as the sun dips low, your group settles. Everyone performs small rituals, checking fire, redistributing food, ensuring children are safe. The bonds are quiet but strong. Without them, survival would be impossible. Alone, you'd be just another statistic, a cautionary tale buried in the dirt. Together, you persist. Community dynamics are a fragile miracle. In a world where predators, climate, and chance are constantly conspiring against you, humans survive not because they are strongest or smartest, but because they are stubborn and social. And as you close your eyes, huddled near the fire, you understand one immutable truth: no one survives alone. You wake to a morning that feels ugh. The air is heavier than usual, sticky with moisture, yet dry in places you didn't know could be dry. The wind carries scents that don't belong together: smoke from distant fires, the bitter tang of decay, and a faint metallic note that makes your stomach churn. Something in the world has changed, though you can't put your finger on it. The grass underfoot is patchy. A plant that always grew near the riverbank is gone, wilted into nothingness. The water in the shallow streams is lower than usual, sluggish, murky. You kneel and taste it, not because you want to, but because survival leaves you no choice. Bitter. Filthy. But better than nothing. You swallow, grimacing, and keep moving. Your group notices too. The hunter frowns at tracks that should be familiar. Deer and antelope are thinner, fewer, more skittish. Predators grow bolder, hungrier, encroaching into places they usually avoid. Hyenas are more aggressive. Lions seem desperate, their roars more frequent, closer, as if the world itself is squeezing them. You shiver, though it isn't entirely from cold. Rain patterns are unpredictable. Some days, water falls so hard it floods the lowlands, washing away nests, food caches, even small patches of ground where roots might grow. Other days, nothing falls at all, leaving cracked earth and thirsty plants. You wonder if the universe has a sense of irony, playing this cruel game of feast and famine, and watching you stumble through it. You notice the subtle changes first. The migration paths of prey animals shift. Familiar berries don't bloom on schedule. Some edible roots become scarce or disappear altogether. The birds you relied on to signal safe zones no longer return at the same time of year. Survival, once hard but predictable, now requires constant vigilance and imagination. Dark humor becomes a lifeline. Maybe the universe is just on vacation, you whisper to yourself, knowing full well that doesn't help you at all. But laughter, even quiet, keeps the group sane. Your small victories, finding a new berry bush, spotting fresh water, become heroic tales, exaggerated slightly, to remind everyone that survival is still possible. Predators, too, are adapting. They notice the same changes and exploit them. Hungry, desperate, and fearless, they adjust hunting grounds, stalking trails humans once thought safe. Your careful routines are no longer guarantees. Every day is a negotiation. How much risk can you tolerate for a meal? How far from safety can you venture? Each decision feels like walking a tightrope over a pit of teeth and claws. The group begins to change in response. Roles shift subtly. Hunters spend more time tracking scarce prey. Gatherers explore unfamiliar areas for edible plants. Elders teach younger members not just what to eat, but how to watch, listen, and interpret signs of environmental change. Adaptation becomes second nature. Stubbornness alone won't keep you alive anymore. Observation, flexibility, and cooperation are equally important. Even small things carry weight. A sudden gust of wind might signal a predator or approaching storm. A change in the river's color might indicate flooding upstream or contamination. Your senses are sharper than ever, calibrated to a world that seems intent on throwing new challenges at you daily. And through it all, the sky is just a little darker than it should be. The sun, usually a reliable compass and source of warmth, feels dimmer, weaker. Shadows are longer. Nights are colder. You can't shake the sense that something bigger is coming, something that will dwarf everything you've endured so far. By the end of the day, you sit with the group near the fire, sharing what little you've gathered, plotting tomorrow's path, and quietly acknowledging a truth you can't yet fully articulate. The world is changing, and survival requires more than stubbornness. It requires constant adaptation, a careful reading of every rustle, every smell, every shadow. You drift to sleep under a sky that feels heavier than it did yesterday, one eye open to the possibility that the environment itself may become your fiercest adversary yet. And in that quiet darkness, the subtle hint of ash in the distance, a harbinger you can't yet understand, whispers that life, as you know it, is about to be tested like never before. You wake before the sun fully stretches over the horizon, your muscles stiff, your bones complaining louder than your stomach. The first task, fire. Not just any fire, your lifeline. Without it, nights are a frozen nightmare, and even daytime brings predators too bold for comfort. You crouch, rubbing sticks together, eyes half closed, hoping that smoke will rise before your patience runs out. Spoiler alert, patience is in short supply. Around you, the group stirs. Everyone has their roles, and they perform them automatically, like cogs in a stubborn, survival-driven machine. The hunter sharpens stone tools while grumbling, a ritual that is both practical and cathartic. The grandmother checks roots and berries, sniffing and prodding them, muttering cryptic advice about which ones are safe today. You suspect the danger level of these plants is as much superstition as science, but you follow her guidance anyway. Breakfast is whatever you can scrounge. Roots, nuts, insects, and occasionally a small animal you caught after hours of stalking. It's gritty, chewy, and often undercooked, but edible enough to keep you alive. You swallow, grimacing, and remind yourself that food tastes better when it isn't optional. Hunger, after all, is a blunt teacher. Shelter is another daily struggle. You don't have the luxury of bricks or lumber. Your hut is whatever you can assemble, branches, leaves, mud, maybe an abandoned burrow. You discover quickly that these structures aren't just inconvenient, they're temperamental. A heavy rainstorm or strong wind can destroy hours of labor in minutes. And forget your modern comforts. No AC, no mattress, no walls that don't leak. You curl up on dirt and call it home. Hunting isn't glamorous either. Hours of stealth and observation, punctuated by brief bursts of exertion, followed by disappointment when the prey escapes or you misjudge the wind. And let's be honest, sometimes it's laughably pathetic. A bird lands too far away. A rabbit sees you first. You sigh, remind yourself that life is unfair, and try again. Repetition is your mantra. Hunt, fail, survive, repeat. Water is never just water. You must test it, watch it, make sure it isn't contaminated. Sometimes it's brackish, sometimes murky, sometimes just wrong. You drink anyway because there isn't a choice, and you hope your stomach forgives you. It usually doesn't, but at least it keeps pumping. Predators still lurk, reminding you that your daily rituals are, ultimately, a negotiation with death. Each trip outside the safety of your fire circle is a calculated risk. One careless step could mean the end of your story, or someone else's amusement as your bones become part of the savanna scenery. You develop an intimate understanding of every rustle, every shadow, every distant roar. It's exhausting but necessary. Despite all this, small joys exist. The warmth of the fire on a cold morning, the sight of a successful hunt, the brief chatter of children who haven't yet realized how fragile life is. Humor, however dark, becomes essential. You joke quietly to yourself, if the antelope survives my aim, maybe it's testing my patience. It doesn't make the work easier, but it makes it bearable. As the day drags on, rituals blend with struggle. You forage, hunt, repair shelters, keep watch. Every movement, every decision, is a calculation. And yet, somewhere in the monotony, there is a rhythm that whispers, life continues, despite everything. That stubborn insistence, that tiny defiance against the merciless world, is enough to keep you moving. By nightfall, your body aches, your stomach grumbles, but the fire still burns. Your group huddles together, sharing warmth, tiny portions of food, and quiet stories of survival. You close your eyes, listening to the night, aware that tomorrow will demand the same combination of endurance, patience, and dark humor. And yet, for now, you've survived another day. The rituals, mundane as they seem, are what keep humanity clinging to life. Fire, food, shelter, cooperation, they are simple, fragile, absurdly necessary. And you, ever stubborn, endure. You lie awake, fire crackling nearby, listening to the strange orchestra of the night. Crickets, frogs, distant predator roars, and the occasional snapping branch. It's all part of the soundtrack of your life. And as your eyelids grow heavy, your mind wanders. Not in boredom, not in comfort, but in that quiet space between survival and imagination. You wonder about things you can't fully explain. Why the sun disappears sometimes, why the rain falls when it does, why animals behave the way they do. You might suspect that the world has a mind of its own, a cruel, indifferent mind, but you still try to make sense of it. Maybe it responds to you. Maybe your prayers, whispered under your breath, or your small rituals actually matter. Or maybe the universe is just laughing quietly at your attempts to understand it. The stars above are bright tonight, scattered like spilled dust across the black sky. You stare at them, long enough to feel both insignificant and strangely infinite. Somewhere up there, patterns exist that you cannot name. Maybe they are guides. Maybe they are warnings. You don't know. But watching them, you feel the faintest spark of curiosity, the same spark that will one day lead humans to map the skies, navigate oceans, and wonder what else is out there. For now, it only leads to quiet speculation and the occasional whispered story to the group. Your ancestors' thoughts are practical too. You wonder if tomorrow's hunt will succeed. You wonder if the fire will last through the night. You wonder if the child who wandered too close to the tall grass will survive without drawing the attention of a predator. These thoughts are urgent, sharp, necessary. But in the gaps between necessity, curiosity creeps in, poking at the edges of survival. You imagine strange things. Maybe the wind carries spirits, maybe the river speaks in subtle language, maybe trees remember every footstep that passes by. You share these ideas with the group quietly, sometimes as warnings, sometimes as stories. The adults laugh, the children listen wide-eyed, and the truth is that you don't know what's real. But the act of imagining gives you a slight sense of control over a world that refuses to be tamed. Fear mixes with fascination. The roar of a distant predator sparks your imagination more than it sparks panic. You envision what it's like to be on the other side, stronger, faster, more cunning. You picture yourself as the predator, briefly tasting the thrill of power before reality reminds you that you're not. The laughable gap between imagination and survival is strangely comforting. At least your mind can wander. At least your thoughts are yours, even when the world outside wants to claim your body. Sometimes, you notice patterns in the environment that no one else sees. A cluster of footprints that indicates something larger approaching. A peculiar arrangement of stones that might serve as a marker, a subtle shift in the wind that hints at rain. These observations are instinctual, yet speculative. They form the rudimentary threads of science, philosophy, and strategy long before words exist to describe them. You think, and the world responds, in ways you can only barely interpret. Humor finds its way into even these reflective moments. You joke silently about how ridiculous it is to spend half your day worrying about ants, while saber-toothed cats roam the periphery like unpaid auditors of your competence. Life is absurd, and yet absurdity becomes a tool to endure the weight of reality. As the night deepens, you lie there, imagining futures you will never see, pondering forces you cannot control, and feeling the faint but stubborn pulse of curiosity that refuses to die. It is this same curiosity that ensures your group survives, adapts, and, against all odds, persists. And as your eyes finally close, the stars witness another human mind stretching its small boundaries, teetering between terror and wonder, unaware that the world is about to test humanity like never before. The morning begins like any other, with the ritual of fire, the hunt, the constant dance of survival. And then it happens. A tremor under your feet, subtle at first, like the earth is stretching after a long, uncomfortable sleep. You freeze. Nothing moves. Not the fire, not the animals, not even the wind. The sensation is strange, unnerving. Rocks rattle faintly. Dust trickles from cracks in the nearest shelter. Your stomach twists. You glance at the group. Eyes meet eyes. Nobody speaks because what could be said? You have felt the ground shift before. A minor quake here, a larger one there, but this feels different, insistent, purposeful. The hunter mutters something under his breath. Maybe a warning. Maybe an excuse for panic. The grandmother squints at the horizon, reading the air, the clouds, the faint smell of sulfur that you hadn't noticed before. Your mind tries to rationalize. Maybe it's a storm underground. Maybe the earth is merely settling. Maybe it's the universe reminding you that you are small, weak, and completely irrelevant. You notice patterns forming almost instinctively. Birds fly off suddenly. A distant river burbles louder than usual. Tiny pebbles jump along the ground. Even the shadows seem off, jittering with the vibration of unseen forces. You make a mental note. Pay attention. Survival often hinges on noticing what others dismiss. The tremors continue sporadically throughout the day, each pulse a reminder of your fragility. The group grows tense. Small arguments flare over mundane tasks. A child accidentally topples a basket of gathered roots, and the hunter snaps at them, not out of cruelty, but out of fear that every distraction could cost lives. You learn quickly that fear sharpens both senses and tempers. Humor, ever your shield, surfaces in tiny bursts. Maybe the earth just wants to dance. You whisper quietly, knowing full well that dancing might get you eaten. The joke barely registers, even with yourself, but it's enough to dull the edge of panic for a moment. Survival is a mix of observation, calculation, and absurdity. By evening, the tremors intensify slightly. The fire struggles to stay lit as dust falls from above. You notice cracks forming in familiar rocks. Even the river seems restless. The signs are subtle but cumulative. Something massive, something far beyond your comprehension, is stirring underground. And it's heading toward you. Your group huddles closer, instincts kicking in. The hunter checks the perimeter. The grandmother mutters quietly, touching her forehead with wrinkled fingers, as if she can sense the earth's heartbeat. Children cling to one another, uncertain whether the shaking is dangerous or just another part of life. You quietly hope that it isn't the kind of danger you cannot survive. Night falls. You lie awake, listening to the trembling earth, imagining the unimaginable. The tremors are not just physical, they are warnings, foreshadowing a catastrophe that will rewrite everything you know about survival, about life, about humanity itself. The air carries an ominous weight. Every instinct tells you to prepare, to flee, to do something. But what? You have no map, no plan, no safety net. Just observation, caution, and a stubborn refusal to vanish quietly. And somewhere deep beneath the earth, Toba stirs, building toward a moment that will forever change the world, and test the endurance of every human who happens to still be breathing. The tremors were just the beginning. By midday, subtle changes make you squint and tilt your head. The wind carries an unfamiliar tang, sulfur, bitter and sharp, like the air itself is warning you. Birds flee in chaotic flocks, chattering as if trying to convince each other that something is terribly wrong. You notice the small animals scurrying in unusual directions, and for the first time, you wonder if maybe, just maybe, the universe is actively plotting against you. Rivers run strangely, their currents faster in some places, sluggish in others, churning up mud and debris. The familiar landmarks you've memorized no longer feel trustworthy. Stones you thought stable wobble slightly underfoot. Even the trees seem restless, branches bending in ways that defy the usual patterns of wind. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but you're learning to notice. In a world this cruel, subtlety is life or death. Your group senses it too. The hunter frowns, squinting at distant hills, muttering about animal behavior he doesn't understand but interprets instinctively. The grandmother touches the soil, sniffing the air, murmuring warnings that make sense only to her. You follow their lead, unsure if the panic is rational or instinctual, but it doesn't matter. Preparation, no matter how small, is better than complacency. Smoke rises from distant fires in strange patterns. Maybe it's lightning. Maybe other humans signaling. Maybe something else entirely. You can't know. You only know that the world has shifted, and waiting for clarity could mean death. Survival is about action, not certainty. You adjust your path, guiding the group towards slightly higher ground just in case. Animals behave unervingly. A herd of antelope moves like a single organism, suddenly sprinting in a direction you hadn't anticipated. Predators become more visible, more desperate, prowling in odd patterns. The balance of hunter and hunted feels upside down. For once, you are not the clever one observing. You are the clever one reacting, barely keeping pace with instincts older and sharper than yours. The sky itself seems different. Clouds gather in strange formations, the sun dimming slightly, almost imperceptibly, behind a haze that shouldn't exist yet. Shadows stretch long and weird, and the light has a strange quality, as if filtered through some cosmic warning sign you can't decipher. You make a mental note. This is not normal. Normal is a luxury humans cannot afford. Dark humor keeps your mind intact. Maybe the sun's taking a vacation, you whisper, knowing full well that this is not a joke the universe appreciates. Still, laughing quietly, if only to yourself, is a small rebellion, a reminder that even under mounting threat, humans cling to absurdity. Humor is survival in its own way. By evening, the signs are undeniable. The tremors, the winds, the animal behavior, the odd haze in the sky, they are all pointing toward a disaster larger than anything your ancestors have seen. You can feel it in the air, like a heavy hand pressing down on your shoulders, reminding you that tomorrow may not come as it did today. Your group huddles closer to the fire. Silence dominates, punctuated by occasional murmurs and careful observation. The children sense tension, though they cannot name it. The adults do. Every instinct screams caution, every nerve is on edge. Survival is no longer just a routine, it is urgent, tense, and precarious. As night falls, you lie awake, listening to the subtle quivers of the earth, the cries of distant animals, and the faint rustle of something massive stirring far away. You do not yet know what it is. You only know that something is coming, something that will rewrite the rules of existence and challenge the stubborn resilience of every human alive. And somewhere far to the east, the Toba supervolcano rumbles, slowly awakening, preparing to remind humanity just how close it has always been to the edge. By mid-morning, the tremors and subtle signs have escalated into something unmistakable. The sun, once a reliable guide and comfort, now hangs behind a thick, shifting veil of ash. Its light is pale, filtered, ghostly, like a distant memory of warmth rather than a force you can rely on. Shadows stretch unnaturally long, and the world seems paused, holding its breath for something catastrophic. The air smells sharp, acrid, and impossible to ignore. Sulfur, dust, smoke, and something older, something almost alive, fill your nostrils. You breathe it anyway, because survival leaves no options, and you curse under your breath, realizing that even oxygen now carries risk. Every inhalation tastes like the prelude to disaster. Your group senses it too. The hunter squints at the horizon, scanning the muted sky for movement, for signs of prey, for anything normal. The grandmother mutters under her breath, touching the soil and leaves, as if she can feel the pulse of the world and read it like Braille. Children cling close, unnerved, sensing the tension even if they cannot name it. Birds vanish. Animals flee erratically. Even predators are disoriented, prowling in unusual patterns, their instincts momentarily confused by the ash-laden air. You notice that the familiar rhythms of the savanna, the migrations, the predictable calls, the gentle flow of life, are gone. The world has shifted, and everything alive is reacting, scrambling, surviving. And then it begins in earnest. Distant mountains belch thick columns of smoke and ash that rise higher than anything you can comprehend. The earth groans and trembles beneath your feet. A sound, low and ominous, rolls through the landscape, not a roar, not a rumble, but something in between. Your body tenses. You glance at the group. Faces pale. Silence dominates. Nobody speaks because what can you say? Words fail in the presence of the colossal. The ash falls slowly at first, like dust in a forgotten corner of a cave. It clings to skin, hair, and clothing, turning your world gray. Breathing becomes harder. Your lungs burn. You cough, the taste of grit bitter on your tongue. The ground begins to accumulate a fine layer of this alien material, softening footprints, covering plants, hiding familiar tracks. Navigation, already a fragile art, becomes guesswork. You try to reason as humans do. Maybe it's temporary. Maybe the wind will clear. Maybe the world is just having a bad day. The absurdity of hope makes you laugh quietly to yourself. Yeah, sure, the volcano will take a nap and everything will be fine. Humor is thin armor, but it's all you have. The group moves cautiously. Every step is deliberate, every glance toward the darkening sky calculated. Hunting is impossible, foraging is dangerous. Fire is your only advantage, and even that struggles against the falling ash, smothered under a thin gray layer. Water becomes contaminated with silt and debris. Food supplies dwindle. Survival is no longer a matter of routine. It is a relentless negotiation with forces beyond your comprehension. As dusk falls, the sky becomes a permanent twilight. The sun, a dim and distant disk, seems incapable of warming anything. The wind carries ash like a constant reminder of the calamity above. You shiver, even near the fire. Your stomach growls, your lungs ache, your mind races. The world has become a hostile, alien place, and yet your stubbornness refuses to let you collapse into despair. Night arrives under a sky of soot and shadow. The usual sounds of the savanna, the calls of predators, the rustle of leaves, are muffled, subdued, as if even life itself is holding its breath. Your group huddles together, seeking warmth, reassurance, and a brief illusion of safety. Tomorrow will not be like yesterday. The world you knew is gone, replaced by a gray, cold, ash-filled landscape where survival is razor-thin and every decision carries weight. And somewhere beneath it all, Toba continues to rage, its power reshaping continents, climates, and the fragile thread of humanity's existence. The sky darkens, the ash falls, and you, small, stubborn, alive, are forced to confront the limits of endurance. The eruption has ended, or at least paused, but the world you knew is gone. The sky is a permanent gray, and the sun, a weak, distant disk, barely warms anything. Light filters through a haze of ash that drifts endlessly, settling on the ground, clinging to skin, and infiltrating every nook of your fragile existence. Welcome to the volcanic winter. Spoiler alert, it's not cozy. The temperature drops. Nights are bitter, day barely alleviates the chill. Your fire, your life-giving companion, struggles to compete with the cold. Smoke mixes with ash, turning every breath into a challenge. Every exhalation tastes of grit. Every inhalation is a negotiation with survival itself. Clothes are scant, warmth is scarce, and the ground beneath you is hard and unyielding. You remind yourself that discomfort is trivial compared to what's coming. Food is even scarcer. Plants fail to grow under the thick ash. Rivers are muddied, fish scarce, and animals either dead, gone, or driven to desperate migration. Hunting, once a gamble, is now nearly impossible. Small victories, a lizard caught here, a bird trapped there, feel like epic triumphs. You swallow quickly, reminding yourself that taste is optional, survival is mandatory. The group changes under these conditions. Cooperation intensifies. No one can afford selfishness. Every decision is weighted against the likelihood of life or death. Hunters scout farther, gatherers search for anything edible, and elders distribute knowledge with precision that borders on ritualistic. Children learn quickly, too quickly, because mistakes now carry sharper consequences. You realize that the social bonds that kept you alive before now carry the weight of species survival. Predators, too, are desperate. Hungry lions, hyenas, and smaller scavengers roam closer than ever. The usual hierarchy of hunter and hunted shifts constantly. Every encounter carries risk, and every misstep might be fatal. You notice that even familiar predators behave unpredictably, driven as much by hunger as by instinct. Life has become a daily negotiation with a world that has turned hostile beyond comprehension. You adjust your routines. Fire becomes even more vital, a fragile barrier against cold and predators alike. Ash removal, shelter reinforcement, and careful rationing of food and water dominate your thoughts. Humor persists, but it's thin, quiet. You whisper to yourself, "Sure, the world hates us, but at least it's consistent." Small laughter keeps your mind from unraveling entirely. The landscape itself feels alien. Ash muffles sound. Shadows shift in strange ways. Familiar landmarks disappear under gray blankets. Navigation becomes guesswork, relying on memory, instinct, and a stubborn refusal to give in. The world has become unfamiliar, unpredictable, and utterly unforgiving. You notice the subtle toll on your body. Fatigue is constant, muscles ache from overwork and cold, and hunger gnaws relentlessly. Illness becomes a new predator. Every cough, every fever, every sign of weakness could be fatal in a world where resources are at their limits. Survival demands more than skill. It demands resilience, adaptation, and a stubborn streak that refuses to yield. Days stretch into weeks, weeks into months. And yet, somehow, you endure. Small adaptations, smarter fire management, improved hunting tactics, careful rationing allow your group to scrape by. You may not thrive, but you survive. Survival is enough. And somewhere, far beneath the surface, Toba's eruption continues to echo through climate, geology, and the fragile thread of human existence. Humanity teeters on the edge, held aloft by endurance, stubbornness, and sheer chance. You wake to another day, cold, hungry, and ash-covered, and remind yourself, survival is your only option, and tomorrow, if luck permits, you may live to see the sun rise, though it will never shine as it did before. By now, the eruption is behind you, but the world has shifted into a merciless gray monotone. Ash covers everything, and sunlight barely penetrates the veil overhead. The air smells of dust and smoke, and the ground crunches underfoot with a mixture of grit and despair. But the real enemy isn't the cold, the ash, or even the predators, it's hunger. Food has become scarce, almost laughably so. Plants that once flourished are now buried or dead. Berries are gone. Roots are shriveled. Leaves taste bitter, and the occasional mushroom might poison you faster than it nourishes. You inspect every potential morsel with suspicion and gratitude in equal measure. Survival has become an exercise in creative cuisine. If it moves and isn't obviously lethal, maybe it's dinner. The group scavenges relentlessly. Hunters roam further than ever, tracking the scattered remnants of prey. Deer, antelope, and smaller animals are fewer, skittish, and weakened. Predators, equally desperate, are closer than they've ever been, forcing you to weigh each risk with brutal precision. One wrong step, one poorly timed movement, and a meal becomes a memory, or worse. Dark humor surfaces again, because without it, despair would crush you. You whisper under your breath, "Well, at least the lizard tastes consistent." A small, almost imperceptible joke, but enough to remind yourself that your mind is still intact. Survival isn't just physical, it's mental, and laughter, even brittle and dry, is a shield against the creeping edge of hopelessness. Food scarcity changes the group dynamic. Cooperation intensifies. Selfishness is punished by immediate consequences. Elders ration carefully, teaching the young how to forage efficiently, how to identify what's safe, and how to stretch tiny portions into an illusion of sufficiency. Every mouthful is precious. Every shared meal reinforces bonds and trust, because betrayal now carries a mortal cost. Children grow thinner, hungrier, but they adapt quickly. Hunger sharpens senses, increases alertness, and instills an instinct for survival that borders on cruel efficiency. The old say that hardship shapes humanity, but here, in the ash-choked world, you can see it in real time. Small humans are learning to navigate a planet that is no longer forgiving. Starvation casts shadows beyond the physical. It sharpens fear, irritates tempers, and turns minor disputes into life-or-death arguments. A stolen morsel, a misallocated ration, a small mistake. These are no longer inconveniences. They are threats to survival. And yet, the group perseveres, because giving in is never an option. You survive by sheer stubbornness, observation, and the unspoken agreement that each person matters, for now. You notice the toll on your own body. Muscles weaken. Stamina drops. Thoughts become foggy. Every step requires conscious effort. And yet, you move forward, driven by hunger, fear, and that stubborn pulse of life that refuses to yield to circumstance. Starvation sharpens your instincts, refines your focus, and teaches lessons you didn't want to learn but have no choice but to accept. Small victories become monumental. A bird caught. A lizard trapped. A few edible roots discovered under layers of ash. You celebrate quietly, sharing with the group, acknowledging that survival is now measured in bites rather than abundance. Each day is a negotiation. Ration food, avoid predators, conserve energy, repeat. The volcanic winter presses on, relentless. Hunger is constant, gnawing at the edges of every thought, every plan. And yet, humanity endures, stubborn and fragile, scraping by through cooperation, ingenuity, and a will to survive that refuses to acknowledge the scale of the challenge. By nightfall, you huddle near a weak fire, stomachs growling, bodies aching, minds racing. Tomorrow promises more hunger, more danger, more ash-filled air, but you will rise again. Survival, after all, is not about thriving. It's about refusing to vanish. And in this gray, frozen, starving world, that stubborn refusal is the only thing that matters. You thought the volcanic winter was enough to challenge humanity. You were wrong. Nature has a way of reminding you that survival is not a solo endeavor. It's a battlefield where everything else is equally desperate. Predators, like you, are adapting. Hunger drives cunning, and cunning drives chaos. Lions, once cautious, now patrol areas they avoided before. They study your movements, the patterns of your group, and the weak links in your defenses. You notice it instinctively, the way a predator pauses, measuring, calculating, testing whether your hand trembles or your eyes flicker. Every glance, every rustle, every faint human scent is catalogued, assessed, exploited. Hyenas are bolder, forming packs that move with alarming coordination. You realize that their laughter, once a distant, haunting sound, is now a tactical tool. It echoes across the ash-covered landscape, mocking your attempts at order, warning you that they, too, have learned the rules of survival. You can't blame them. Instinct demands adaptation. But it doesn't make you feel any less exposed. Smaller predators become relentless. Wolves, jackals, and scavengers capitalize on the chaos. A carcass here, a sickly prey there. They follow the path of least resistance, and you are part of that path. One poorly timed movement, a momentary lapse, and your group could easily be reduced to raw materials for someone or something else. Predator behavior teaches you harsh lessons. Ambushes are more sophisticated. Routes are less predictable. And you notice something unsettling. Even prey animals are smarter now. They scatter unpredictably, avoiding routes that were once safe. The balance of life, once familiar and strangely comforting, has tilted. Humans are no longer the apex actors. They are minor characters in a chaotic, ash-filled drama. You adapt too, out of necessity. Hunters move with extreme caution, doubling back, circling, observing shadows and footprints. You create makeshift signals, subtle movements that communicate danger silently. Every eye in the group becomes a sensor, every ear a detector, every sense heightened to an almost unbearable degree. You learn quickly, the predator doesn't need to be stronger, just smarter, hungrier, and slightly luckier. And sometimes that's enough. Dark humor persists, because without it, fear would devour you. You whisper to yourself, at least the lion's coordinating its hunting. Finally, some organization I can respect. The joke is quiet, private. It doesn't change reality, but it keeps your mind from snapping under the relentless pressure. Hunger drives innovation. Traps, snares, and simple strategies multiply. Every small victory, a trapped bird, a hidden route uncovered, is a testament to human ingenuity in the face of relentless natural pressure. And yet, you know that no victory is permanent. Predators adapt faster than humans can hope to, turning the cycle into an endless negotiation of life, death, and patience. Children learn too, faster than ever before. They watch, imitate, anticipate. Instinct becomes intertwined with learned strategy. Survival is no longer a passive inheritance. It is actively taught, drilled, and tested under extreme conditions. The young are hardened early, their small bodies and quick minds preparing for a world where danger is constant and predictable safety is non-existent. By nightfall, the tension never fully leaves. Every distant roar, every rustle in the grass, every unexpected shadow is a reminder that predators, like humanity, adapt. You huddle with your group, exhausted but alive, knowing that tomorrow will demand even greater vigilance, sharper instincts, and a stubborn refusal to vanish. And as you close your eyes, the world outside continues to shift and adapt, reminding you that survival is a relentless, evolving challenge. You endure, not because life is fair or easy, but because humanity, fragile, clever, and stubborn, refuses to disappear quietly. By now, survival isn't just about hunger, cold, or predators. Your body itself becomes a battleground. Cuts, scrapes, and bruises, once minor inconveniences, take on new meaning. The ash, the cold, the constant fatigue, and the scarcity of clean water turn every small wound into a potential threat. Infection is invisible, relentless, and merciless. You trip over a rock while scavenging for roots, scraping your knee. It bleeds, of course. It's not dramatic, not like a predator attack, just a small, ordinary injury. But in this world, ordinary can be deadly. You bandage it as best you can with cloth and leaves, whispering under your breath, "Please don't get infected. Please don't ruin everything." The absurdity of talking to a wound is not lost on you, but sanity is a luxury you can't afford to lose. Illness creeps quietly, like a thief in the night. A cough here, a fever there. Weakness spreads slowly, making the difference between keeping up with the group or falling behind. Every bout of sickness is magnified by scarcity, limited food, polluted water, and the relentless cold. The body, your most trusted tool until now, begins to betray you, and you have to adjust. The group suffers too. You watch as one of the younger hunters falters, skin pale beneath the ash, energy waning. The grandmother fusses over him with practiced care, applying crushed leaves, murmuring remedies that may or may not work. Every human has knowledge, and every life is precious. Illness in a small group can cascade quickly, turning minor misfortune into a critical threat. You learn subtle tricks to survive. Clean water is precious. Even rinsing a wound can make the difference between recovery and tragedy. Rest becomes sacred, even when the cold, hunger, or predators insist otherwise. You whisper encouragement, swap duties, and ration your limited energy like currency. Survival is now as much about tending fragile bodies as navigating the hostile world outside. Humor persists, dark and ironic. "Well, at least I won't need to hunt tomorrow," you mutter quietly when your ankle aches, laughing at the grim practicality of injury. It doesn't fix the pain, but it eases the tension just enough to keep moving. In this world, humor is oxygen. Without it, despair would set in faster than any virus. Children and elders are especially vulnerable. You notice the thinness of small bodies, the frailty of those past their prime. Care becomes a daily ritual, watching, guiding, and sometimes carrying those who cannot move fast enough. Every choice carries weight, because the wrong move could mean death for someone whose life is already precarious. Predators exploit weakness. The sick, the slow, the injured, they notice. Every tremor, cough, or stumble draws attention. You realize that physical weakness is as dangerous as hunger, as dangerous as exposure. Survival is not just about being alive. It is about being capable of navigating a world where every flaw is magnified. By nightfall, you are exhausted. The fire warms your numb limbs, but you know tomorrow will be equally demanding. Every wound, every fever, every small ache is a reminder that survival is fragile and fleeting. Humanity endures not because the world is kind, but because it refuses to give in entirely, even when everybody in the group is battered and tested. As you close your eyes, listening to the groans of the earth above and the restless murmurs of your group, you recognize a simple truth. In this ash-choked world, the body is both a tool and a liability. Care for it and you may live. Neglect it, and extinction doesn't require a volcano. It simply waits quietly, watching, patient. Amid the endless gray, the cold, the hunger, and the threat of predators, life continues in tiny victories. You wake to a day that could be indistinguishable from yesterday, but today, the universe gives you small, almost absurd reasons to keep going. Survival, after all, is a series of incremental triumphs. The first is fire. Somehow, despite ash, damp wood, and your own fatigue, the flames rise higher than yesterday. Smoke curls in the morning air, fragile but defiant. You whisper a sarcastic, "Bravo," knowing full well that tomorrow could undo everything. Still, the warmth seeps into your frozen limbs, and for a moment, the cold feels negotiable. Hunting yields minor victories too. A bird caught after hours of careful stalking. A rabbit trapped in a snare you barely set up properly. The taste is thin, the flesh chewy, and the satisfaction tempered by hunger, but it is enough. Small portions become celebrations. You pass scraps around the group, and even children smile through the thin haze of ash. Survival tastes bitter, yes, but it is still nourishment. Gathering plants brings more triumphs. Beneath the layer of gray, small roots and hardy herbs persist. You dig carefully, tasting, sniffing, testing each leaf. One plant, tiny and almost invisible, provides enough nutrition to supplement the meager meals. The grandmother nods at your discovery, approving silently. It is a small victory, a reminder that even in destruction, life persists. Shelter improvements also count. A minor repair to a leaky roof, some extra branches for wind protection, even a small clearing to reduce predator ambush. These adjustments are quiet triumphs. They do not feel heroic, but they matter. Every decision, every effort, keeps the group alive. Survival is cumulative. One small triumph after another becomes the thread holding humanity together. Observation and learning yield unexpected wins. You notice animal tracks indicating the presence of a hidden water source. Following them, you and the group find a small, clear stream. It is cold and shallow but drinkable. You marvel quietly. Luck, instinct, and careful attention combine into a fragile lifeline. Survival often depends on noticing what others overlook. Even humor becomes a triumph. In the face of relentless despair, you whisper under your breath, "Well, at least the lizard doesn't judge my aim." The joke is weak, but it reminds everyone that their minds are still intact, that despair has not consumed them entirely. Laughing quietly becomes a method of endurance, a way to persist psychologically when physical survival is barely manageable. Children adapt quickly, and their small successes are victories for the entire group. A child learns to spot edible roots faster than you can. Another manages to trap a small animal with minimal guidance. These accomplishments, though minor, ripple through the group, boosting morale and reinforcing the fragile bonds of cooperation. Each success is amplified, a bright spark in the gray monotony of volcanic winter. Predators continue to roam, But some clever adjustments give you moments of reprieve. By moving carefully, observing patterns, and timing actions just right, the group evades danger more often than expected. Each close call that ends without loss is a triumph, though it comes with a quiet acknowledgement that luck and skill are temporary allies. By evening, you reflect on the day. The world remains harsh, gray, and threatening, but the group survives another 24 hours. Every small meal, every repaired shelter, every avoided predator is a quiet victory. You huddle near the fire, sharing warmth and the faint sense of achievement. It is fragile, fleeting, and almost absurd, but in this ash-choked landscape, absurdity is survival. As you close your eyes, you realize that these small triumphs, when strung together, form a chain strong enough to resist the weight of extinction. Humanity persists, not because life is easy, but because even in the bleakest circumstances, humans find reasons, tiny, stubborn, almost laughable reasons, to continue. Survival is a cruel teacher. Just when you think the day's small triumphs have given you breathing room, reality reminds you that life is fragile. The group is smaller now. Some fall ill, others weaken under hunger, and a few simply vanish, taken by predators, exhaustion, or despair. You notice the empty spaces around the fire at night, and each absence is a silent punch to the gut. It begins subtly. Someone fails to rise early for the hunt, their body too weak to move. You glance at them, hoping for stubbornness to prevail, but exhaustion wins. Another coughs, the sound harsh and wet in the cold, ash-filled air. You wonder if that cough will be the last sound they ever make. Survival is not only physical, it's psychological. Each loss weighs heavily on your mind, sharpening your awareness but dulling your hope. The child who once discovered roots effortlessly now struggles, eyes hollow, body thin. You try to guide them, to share portions, to distribute warmth and care, but even your efforts can't replace the relentless pressure of volcanic winter. The group, once a tight network of cooperation and trust, now feels stretched thin. Every absence, every faltering, reminds you that humanity clings to life by a thread, fragile, tenuous, and sometimes invisible. Predators exploit weakness. They sense who is slowing down, who cannot keep pace, who falters in attention. One misstep, one moment of distraction, and a member of the group disappears. The loss is immediate, brutal, and undeniable. You stare at the empty space, muttering quietly, "Well, that was efficient, I guess." Dark humor is the only shield against the creeping despair, though it feels weak and brittle. Illness continues its quiet rampage. Wounds become infected. Fevers spike. You try everything you know, from crushed leaves to careful bandaging, but some bodies simply cannot endure. Watching them fade, you realize that survival is not guaranteed for anyone, least of all you. Every breath, every heartbeat is a fragile victory that could end tomorrow. The emotional toll is subtle but omnipresent. Anxiety spreads like a virus. Every movement, every sound, every shadow is measured against the probability of loss. Grief simmers quietly beneath the surface, tempered by necessity. You cannot allow despair to cripple action. You cannot dwell on what's gone, only on what remains. And yet, the human heart remembers, storing each absence as a ghost in the corners of memory. Small disputes flare as stress mounts. Food is rationed more tightly, decisions become sharper, patience thins. Arguments erupt over who eats first, who rests longer, who scouts the most dangerous areas. You recognize the absurdity. Survival demands cooperation, yet scarcity breeds tension, and every choice carries the weight of mortality. The humor you cling to becomes darker, almost sardonic. Well, if we don't kill each other first, maybe the lions will. By nightfall, the empty spaces are undeniable. One less body around the fire, one less pair of eyes to scan the darkness. The group is smaller, quieter, more cautious. Yet even in contraction, the remaining members cling to life stubbornly, a fragile testament to endurance. Loss teaches efficiency, focus, and brutal adaptability, but it also carves deep grooves of grief into every mind. And you, small, stubborn, and ash-covered, lie awake feeling both stronger and more vulnerable. Humanity persists, but at a cost. Each survival is a victory, yes, but one measured against absence, against what has been lost, and against the invisible shadow of extinction that looms over every day. The group shrinks, the ash falls, the cold bites deeper, and yet, somehow, humanity refuses to disappear entirely. It's messy, fragile, and almost laughable, but survival in the face of such relentless pressure is stubbornly persistent. Just when you think the volcanic winter has peaked, the weather reminds you who's in charge. The ash-laden sky presses down, dimming the sun to a faint, cold disk. Wind gusts whip across the landscape, biting through your meager clothing and extinguishing even the strongest of fires. You huddle closer, muttering quietly, "Oh good, the universe found a new way to make us miserable." Snow falls sporadically, mixed with ash, creating a gritty, gray crust over the ground. It's not enough to blanket the world in beauty. It's enough to make every step uncertain, every path slippery, and every movement exhausting. Each footprint sinks into the ash-snow mix, fragile evidence that you are still here, still alive, but also a map for predators and a stark reminder of your vulnerability. Rivers begin to freeze at the edges, water levels fluctuate unpredictably, and even familiar landmarks become treacherous. The ground hardens in some places, softens in others, and the uneven terrain threatens injuries with every step. You curse under your breath and adjust, calculating each movement with care. Survival has become less about routine and more about constant vigilance. Wind drives ash into your eyes, your nose, your throat. Each inhalation burns, each gust threatens to topple your fragile shelters. The fire sputters, smoke chokes, and warmth becomes a precious, fleeting commodity. You remind yourself that comfort is now an illusion. Survival is not about feeling safe, it's about enduring relentlessly, day after day. The group feels the strain too. Small arguments flare over who tends the fire, who gathers wood, and who scouts the dangerous terrain. Patience wears thin. Every decision carries the weight of life or death, and tempers fray under constant pressure. Yet, even amidst tension, cooperation persists. Humanity's stubbornness thrives on necessity, even when fatigue and despair gnaw relentlessly. Hunger amplifies the cold. Weak bodies shiver more, move slower, and become increasingly vulnerable. Every meal, every morsel, is a small victory against both starvation and frostbite. Children cling closer, elders move cautiously, and you become hyper-aware of who is struggling most. Survival now demands not only physical effort but attention, care, and allocation of resources with ruthless precision. Predators adjust as well. They are clever, persistent, and increasingly bold. Snow and ash provide camouflage, muffling their approach and giving them advantages that did not exist before. Every hunt is riskier. Every scavenging trip carries the possibility of death from both environmental hazards and opportunistic predators. The cold sharpens instincts, but even the sharpest senses can be fooled in this altered world. Rain mixes with ash, creating slick mud that clings to your feet and makes travel exhausting. Clothing and shelter become damp, and warmth is nearly impossible to maintain. Even your fire is at the mercy of wind and precipitation. You curse quietly, acknowledging that the planet has a sense of irony. It punishes the living not with single catastrophes, but with a relentless sequence of challenges that test endurance to the breaking point. By nightfall, the wind continues to howl. Shelters shiver under the strain, food supplies are low, and frost settles in the corners of your body you didn't realize could ache. Still, you and your group cling together, exchanging silent glances that say more than words. We endure. We survive. And tomorrow, the weather will be just as merciless, but we will be ready, or as ready as humans can be against a world that refuses to relent. Amid ash, snow, wind, and freezing nights, you realize that survival is no longer measured by abundance, comfort, or safety. It is measured by stubborn persistence, by the willingness to endure yet another day, by finding strength in fragile victories, and by refusing, against all odds, to vanish. Hunger drives action. The world outside your fragile shelters is gray, cold, and unwelcoming, but survival leaves no choice. You rise, stiff and aching, and prepare to scavenge, knowing that each day without food could be the last. The volcanic winter has made the ordinary extraordinary. Finding a root, a small animal, or even a patch of edible moss feels like winning the lottery. The landscape is littered with ash and debris, and every step is a gamble. You navigate carefully, reading footprints, broken branches, and the faint scent of water. Predators are everywhere, hiding in plain sight, testing your resolve. Every movement is deliberate, calculated, a negotiation with risk itself. Humor, your fragile mental armor, surfaces quietly. Oh sure, just another day of dodge death while looking for dinner. Easy. Scavenging is not glamorous. It is cold, monotonous, and often fruitless. You dig through ash, moss, and frozen soil, tasting roots that barely qualify as food. Some plants make your tongue burn, others are tasteless, chalky, or slimy. Still, you choose, swallow, and move on. Survival is messy, humiliating, and exhausting, but it is necessary. Small victories are precious. A bird trapped in a snare. A few roots unearthed from beneath the ash. Water discovered in a hidden stream. Each success, however minor, sustains more than the body. It bolsters morale, reinforces cooperation, and reminds you that humanity persists, stubborn and defiant. The group moves with a mixture of caution and desperation. Adults divide duties. Some track prey, others forage, and a few scout for safe routes through treacherous terrain. Children shadow the elders, learning quickly, absorbing skills they will need if the world continues to shrink around them. Survival is as much about passing knowledge as it is about staying alive. Predators complicate everything. A scavenging trip is a gamble against the elements and hungry animals alike. Every rustle in the ash, every shadow that moves across the gray landscape, is a reminder that vigilance is as important as nourishment. You learn quickly, even a minor distraction can turn scavenging into a deadly mistake. Hunger sharpens perception. You notice subtle signs. Footprints indicating small animals, clusters of berries barely visible under ash, broken branches that hint at water sources. Your mind becomes a finely tuned instrument, detecting opportunities invisible to the untrained eye. Survival rewards observation, patience, and intuition, but it never guarantees success. The physical toll is relentless. Muscles ache from constant movement, cold bites deeper when you pause. Fatigue makes each decision heavier. You catch yourself questioning sanity. Is this really life? Or just a bad dream staged by a sadistic planet? Humor again keeps the edge of despair at bay. Without it, scavenging would feel like a pointless march toward inevitable failure. By evening, you return with a mixture of success and frustration. Some portions of food, a small patch of warmth, and enough water to stave off the immediate threat of dehydration. The group shares quietly, measuring portions, ensuring everyone gets at least something. Hunger remains relentless, but today you survived. Small victories accumulate, each one a fragile thread keeping humanity from vanishing. As night falls, you reflect on the delicate balance of scavenging. Every day is a negotiation with risk, endurance, and scarcity. And yet, against all odds, life persists. Humanity adapts, observes, and persists in the gray, cold, ash-covered world. Each morsel found, each trap set, each cautious step forward is a victory, a testament to the stubborn refusal to vanish, even when everything outside seems determined to make you disappear. Survival is lonely, but it is rarely solitary. In the ash-choked expanse, the occasional signs of other humans appear. Distant smoke, footprints barely visible in ash, echoes of voices carried on the wind. Every encounter is a gamble. Are they allies or threats? Friends or competition? Curiosity wars with caution, and instinct whispers that no human is entirely trustworthy when survival is razor-thin. The first encounter is subtle, a rustle beyond the ridge, a movement barely perceptible. You freeze, heart hammering, scanning the gray, indistinct landscape. The other group pauses too. Mutual recognition flickers across faces. You exchange cautious gestures, silent acknowledgments that both curiosity and caution are alive. Humor bubbles quietly under your breath. Ah, great. Humanity's other stubborn branch. This could go well or horribly wrong. Initial interactions are tense. Words are few, actions deliberate. Both groups assess strength, numbers, and intentions. In a world where food is scarce, every human is both a potential ally and a potential rival. Trust is a scarce resource, traded sparingly, and suspicion lingers like the ash that coats everything. You wonder if survival has made humans smarter, or just more paranoid. Probably both. Sometimes, encounters yield resources. Another group shares dried roots, a piece of meat, or hints at water sources. The exchange is delicate, almost ceremonial, conducted with eye contact, hand signals, and the faintest semblance of negotiation. You realize quickly that diplomacy is as crucial as strength. Survival demands strategy, and humans are nothing if not adaptive in negotiation. Other times, encounters bring tension, even violence. Scarce food, fragile shelters, and limited resources breed disputes. A hand reaches for something too eagerly. A glance is misinterpreted. Conflict escalates quickly, sometimes without words. You've seen groups dissolve over minor offenses, trust shredded like brittle ash. In a world this unforgiving, every interaction carries risk. Physical, psychological, and existential. Observation becomes vital. You watch other humans from a distance, noting their movements, their organization, their weaknesses. Are they skilled hunters? Do they understand shelter construction? Can they navigate the ash-covered terrain without injury? Every detail informs strategy. Even humor plays a role. You joke quietly, let's hope they're better at finding food than we are at avoiding lions. Laughter is thin, but it reminds you that the mind survives alongside the body. Children notice too, learning early that not all humans are friends. Their instincts sharpen, teaching caution and discernment. Elders advise, modeling strategy and diplomacy. Every encounter is a lesson, every human interaction a case study in trust, risk, and adaptation. You realize that survival isn't just against the world, it's against human unpredictability as well. Sometimes alliances form. Two groups combine efforts, sharing resources, knowledge, and protection. The combined strength makes hunting, foraging, and defending against predators slightly more manageable. But these alliances are delicate, fragile, and constantly tested. One mistake, one act of greed, and cooperation collapses like a brittle shelter under ash. By nightfall, you reflect on the dual nature of humanity in this world. Other humans are both the most dangerous threat and the most valuable resource. Trust is conditional, collaboration tentative, and observation essential. The ash-covered landscape teaches a brutal lesson. Survival is not just about avoiding predators, enduring hunger, or braving illness. It's about navigating the unpredictable, stubborn, and sometimes terrifying species called human. You lie awake near the fire, listening to distant voices carried faintly on the wind, pondering whether tomorrow will bring cooperation, conflict, or indifference. Either way, one thing is certain: humanity persists, adaptive, cautious, and stubborn, even when every encounter reminds you of the fragility of survival in a world that refuses to relent. The world has changed, though it hasn't asked for your permission. The familiar landscape you once navigated instinctively is now an alien terrain of ash, mud, and shifting shadows. Every step feels deliberate, calculated, and slightly absurd. You tread carefully, each footprint sinking into the gray, powdery surface that hides dangers beneath and erases traces behind. Landmarks are lost. Trees are blackened, hills are obscured, rivers are muted, and even familiar rocks are untrustworthy. You squint constantly, trying to orient yourself in a landscape that refuses to behave. Navigation becomes a daily puzzle. Where is water? Where is shelter? Where is food? The answers are buried beneath layers of ash and uncertainty. Ash itself is treacherous. It clings to clothing, coats hair, and fills every crevice. A gust of wind transforms the world into a gray haze, reducing visibility to a few steps. Paths you walked yesterday are gone. The terrain is deceptive, hiding holes, rocks, and pools of icy water. One misstep can lead to injury, hypothermia, or worse. Humor whispers, "Sure, nothing could go wrong here. Just another stroll through death's art installation." Your group adapts. Scouts move ahead with extreme caution, mapping subtle cues, the direction of wind, disturbed ash, faint animal tracks. Communication becomes mostly silent, hand signals, eye contact, the slightest gestures. Noise is dangerous. Sound carries farther in the ash-choked air, alerting predators or rival humans. Each movement is deliberate, a dance between caution and necessity. Observation is survival. Every shadow, every shift of ash, every change in the wind tells a story. You read the land like a book, noting subtle changes, remembering patterns, predicting danger. Children learn quickly. The ash is not just dirt, it's information. The land speaks if you know how to listen. Even the act of crossing terrain is strategic. Flat areas are deceptive, often concealing weak patches that collapse under weight. Hills and slopes are slippery, ash sliding underfoot. You leap cautiously, testing each step, calculating risk versus reward. Humor surfaces again. Gravity's just here to remind us who's boss. Small jokes keep the mind sharp, if only barely. Shelter placement becomes vital. You seek high ground, stable soil, and protection from wind. Ash piles against walls, sometimes supporting, sometimes threatening collapse. Fires are harder to maintain, needing constant attention, careful tending, and improvisation to avoid being smothered. Navigation is not only about movement, it's about choosing where to survive today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. Predators exploit the new landscape. Tracks are obscured, sounds muffled, and the gray environment offers perfect camouflage. Every hunting or scavenging trip carries double risk, the elements and predators. You adjust constantly, moving unpredictably, altering routines, and using the ash to your advantage when possible. The line between hunter and hunted blurs, and vigilance becomes almost unbearable. By nightfall, you pause on a small ridge, surveying the gray horizon. Your body aches, lungs burn from ash, and your mind is exhausted from calculation and observation. Yet, despite the challenge, you are alive. You survived another day in a landscape that seems designed to erase you. Every careful step, every observation, every adjustment is a victory, even if it feels small against the overwhelming odds. And as darkness falls over the ash-choked land, you realize that navigation is not just physical. It is mental, strategic, and psychological. Survival requires patience, attention, and stubbornness. Each day, each cautious step forward, is a quiet assertion that humanity refuses to vanish entirely even when the world is determined to erase it. In a world suffocating under ash and snow, fire is more than comfort, it is life. Your body trembles from cold that penetrates bone and muscle, a constant reminder that warmth is fragile and fleeting. Every spark, every ember, every flicker of flame carries more weight than any meal, more value than any shelter, more significance than any small victory you've eked from the gray wasteland. You kneel beside the fire, hands cupped, inhaling smoke that stings your eyes and throat. It is both torture and salvation. You whisper under your breath, "Ah yes, fire." Humanity's tiny rebellion against extinction. The flames dance, fragile yet defiant, offering brief warmth against the relentless bite of volcanic winter. You guard it as if it were the only thing keeping death at bay, and in a sense, it is. Fuel is scarce. Wood is buried under ash, soaked with freezing rain, or crumbling from exposure. You search carefully, sorting through debris, comparing twigs for dryness, shaking branches, and listening for that telltale snap. Even the smallest branch becomes precious. Every piece of wood added is a calculated investment in survival. Maintaining the fire requires constant attention. Ash falls, choking flames. Wind gusts, threatening to snuff life from embers. Rain soaks fuel, forcing improvisation. You poke, fan, and shield the flame, a delicate dance of persistence. Humor, dark and quiet, surfaces. Sure, the volcano tried to kill us. But at least we can keep a tiny fire alive. Take that, nature. The group huddles close, sharing warmth and silent reassurance. Children tuck near elders, bodies pressed together, seeking heat and comfort. You notice the unspoken lessons being absorbed. Fire is survival, proximity is survival, and cooperation is survival. The lessons are harsh, immediate, and unforgiving, but they stick. Even meals revolve around fire. Boiling water, cooking small scraps of meat, or roasting roots requires constant vigilance. Smoke must be minimal to avoid attracting predators. You balance nourishment against exposure, knowing that even a simple act of cooking carries risks. A burnt meal is tragic. A lost fire could be fatal. Fire also offers psychological warmth. It combats the gray monotony of ash, the endless cold, and the oppressive despair. You sit, staring into the flickering flames, counting minor victories. No one has fallen to predators today. The group remains intact, and your fire still burns. Small comfort, yes. But in this gray, cold world, small is everything. Night brings deeper cold. Even wrapped in cloth, pressed near the fire, shivering persists. You adjust positions, rotate proximity, and ensure the weakest are closest to the embers. The fire dictates routine. When to eat, when to rest, when to move. It is life, law, and rhythm. Without it, survival is unimaginable. Predators, sensing heat and smoke, lurk closer than ever. You watch shadows dance at the fire's edge, tension coiling in every muscle. Fire is both shield and beacon, a paradox of safety and risk. Vigilance is constant, even as warmth lulls the body into temporary comfort. Humor slips in quietly. Yes, let's sit here and glow like dinner for the lions. Brilliant idea. By dawn, the fire has burned low. You rebuild it, exhausted but alive. Each ember is a tiny victory against the gray, frozen world outside. The struggle to maintain warmth is endless, but you persist. Fire is more than survival. It is resistance, a flicker of human defiance in a world that seems determined to erase you. As the group settles near the flames, you realize that warmth is not just physical. It is cooperation, vigilance, and stubbornness. Survival in this volcanic winter depends on fire, and fire depends on humans who refuse to surrender. And for tonight, at least, the flames burn, fragile but unyielding, a small triumph in a gray, ash-filled world. Water, once taken for granted, has become a treasure more valuable than food, more vital than fire, and far more elusive than you ever imagined. Streams are muddied, rivers are clogged with ash, and rainfall is unpredictable, harsh, and often contaminated. Every sip is a negotiation with survival itself. You realize quickly, without water, even the strongest body falters faster than the mind can protest. Your day begins with a careful survey. Footprints in ash, depressions in the ground, moss growing near slightly damp soil, all tiny clues pointing to liquid life. You squint against the gray haze, searching for reflections, subtle movement, anything to indicate that water still exists in a form safe enough to drink. Humor surfaces quietly. Ah yes, water. That rare, mythical substance everyone keeps talking about. Travel to a water source is a gamble. The ash makes footing treacherous, and predators take advantage of movement. One misstep on slippery ash-covered ground could leave you exposed, vulnerable, or injured. You weigh risk versus necessity, knowing that a full belly is useless without hydration. Every careful step is deliberate, a silent prayer whispered in ash-choked wind. The water itself is rarely pristine. You scoop cautiously, filtering through cloth or letting particles settle. The first sip is cautious, deliberate, almost reverent. You taste grit, ash, maybe faint traces of algae, but it sustains life. You pass it among the group, rationed precisely, aware that one misallocation could threaten survival. Even the tiniest drop becomes sacred, every sip a quiet triumph. Children watch closely, learning the value of patience, observation, and respect. They absorb lessons in filtering, storing, and protecting water. Every movement is modeled, every instruction quietly enforced. Survival has made teaching urgent, precise, and mercilessly practical. You realize that knowledge is as vital as hydration. Without it, the youngest are lost before they even understand danger. Humor persists, subtle and necessary. Well, at least this muddy puddle isn't trying to eat us, yet. Small jokes maintain sanity, reminding you that the mind survives alongside the body. Survival is not just physical, it's psychological, and in a world where water is scarce, mental resilience becomes as important as a functioning bladder. Water scarcity reshapes daily life. Decisions about movement, hunting, and shelter revolve around hydration. You plan trips carefully, avoid unnecessary exertion, and rotate duties to ensure no one is overtaxed. Even small acts, like drinking before sleep or conserving sweat, become strategic. Each drop is accounted for, each ration carefully divided, and every misstep could be fatal. Predators, adapted to this harsh environment, exploit human movement toward water. Tracks are visible, smell carries further in the ash-laden air. Even a brief pause to hydrate carries risk. You learn to balance caution and necessity with practiced precision, realizing that survival is a constant negotiation between need and danger. By nightfall, the group returns from foraging and hunting, water carefully rationed among the survivors. Each member sips in silence, aware of the value of this fragile resource. The smallest portion is celebrated quietly, a tiny victory in a day dominated by struggle. Survival hinges on balance. Eat enough, drink enough, stay warm, stay alert, and repeat. As you lie near the fire, sipping cautiously, the lesson is clear. Water is life, scarcity sharpens both skill and awareness, and humanity persists not through comfort, but through vigilance, adaptability, and a stubborn refusal to vanish, even when every droplet must be earned through effort, observation, and luck. Time has become slippery, elusive, almost irrelevant. The sun barely penetrates the ash-laden sky, and days bleed into nights like a gray, endless soup. Without familiar markers, sunrise, sunset, seasonal changes, tracking time is both essential and maddening. You realize quickly, survival depends on rhythm, even when the world refuses to cooperate. You notice subtle cues. The length of shadows, faint shifts in temperature, the behavior of animals. All become proxies for hours, days, and weeks. Children follow your lead, learning to read these minute changes with an instinctive understanding. Even the faintest glimmer of light on ash becomes a marker, morning. Or maybe it's still yesterday. Who can say? Humor creeps in quietly, because sanity requires small amusement in a world that refuses normalcy. Water collection, hunting, and shelter maintenance become anchors for measuring time. Tasks are rotated, repeated, and ritualized. Meals happen at roughly the same intervals, fires are tended at predictable points, and scouting trips follow subtle cycles. The repetition is comforting and terrifying at once. It provides structure, yet it reminds you that survival is relentless and unchanging. You invent mental markers. Counting breaths while tending fire. Observing changes in ash texture. Noting how wind shifts over ridges. Every observation, no matter how minor, becomes a measure of continuity in a world that seems determined to erase patterns. Humor helps here too. 100 breaths and maybe we've aged a day. Or maybe we're immortal now. The joke is dark, dry, and entirely necessary. Loss of conventional time takes a toll on the mind. Nights feel longer, days blur, and fatigue distorts perception. You notice yourself becoming hyper-aware of small changes. How frost forms on a branch, how smoke curls in a particular pattern, how a stream's flow changes imperceptibly. Survival becomes both a physical and mental exercise in patience, attention, and endurance. Children and elders help maintain continuity. Rituals develop naturally, tending the fire, rationing food, singing quietly, sharing small observations. These acts, repetitive and seemingly mundane, anchor the group to a shared perception of time. You realize that humanity persists not just through physical survival, but through these fragile threads of memory, habit, and observation. Predators influence your perception of time too. Their appearances are irregular but deadly reminders that vigilance must be constant. Every rustle, every distant howl, every movement in ash-laden shadows is a punctuation mark in a day otherwise difficult to measure. You learn to sync your rhythms to both the environment and the threats it conceals. Sleep becomes a measured strategy. Rest is essential, yet you cannot afford to be careless. You time your slumber carefully, aligning with both environmental cues and predator patterns. The fire's glow acts as a clock, flickering in predictable intervals, while the ash-silent world outside reminds you that even rest carries risk. Humor persists in whispers, "Ah yes, sleep." Our gamble against extinction continues. By nightfall, you recognize that survival is a rhythm, even when conventional time has vanished. Days are counted in breaths, meals, hunts, and fires. Time is measured by endurance, vigilance, and the delicate balance between danger and safety. Humanity clings to life not because it understands hours or seasons, but because it adapts to a world where time itself is a hazy, gray abstraction. And as you close your eyes near the fire, listening to the wind howl and the faint movements of predators in ash, you accept the truth. Tracking time is not about clocks or calendars. It is about survival, rhythm, and stubborn persistence. Each day survived, each night endured, is a testament to the human refusal to vanish, even when the world forgets to mark the passage of days. Survival is as much a mental game as it is a physical one. Hunger gnaws, cold bites, predators lurk, and ash covers everything, but the mind, stubborn as ever, learns to endure. You notice subtle shifts in perception, thought patterns, and attention. Your brain becomes a survival tool, fine-tuned to notice threats, opportunities, and tiny, fleeting victories. At first, fatigue and despair creep in. Days blur. Food is scarce. Water is precious. The ash-choked sky presses down, and the world seems to conspire against you. You catch yourself thinking dark thoughts, imagining the worst. Humor becomes essential. Sure, everything is terrible, but at least we're alive. Kind of. Dark, dry, and quietly ridiculous, but it keeps you from unraveling. Adaptation is gradual. Your senses sharpen, the faintest rustle in ash, the smell of water, the subtle shift of wind across a ridge. Danger is constantly present, yet you learn not to panic. Observation becomes instinctive. Calculation replaces guesswork. Decisions once trivial now carry life or death weight, and your mind handles them, often without conscious effort. The group teaches resilience too. Elders model patience. Children adapt quickly, learning routines that are critical for survival. Cooperation becomes second nature, and small triumphs reinforce mental strength. A bird caught, a fire rebuilt, a safe night endured, all act as subtle psychological victories, proof that effort matters, and that survival, while brutal, is possible. Coping mechanisms emerge. Humor is the quiet backbone. Irony, sarcasm, and dark jokes slip into thought and speech. Ah yes, the ash, the cold, the constant risk of being lunch. Humanity's dream vacation. Laughter is weak, almost absurd, but it reminds you that the mind can persist when the body is tested relentlessly. Isolation and monotony threaten sanity, but routine anchors the mind. Tasks, hunting, foraging, tending fire, become rituals. Each act is a small anchor in the gray, unchanging landscape. Observing patterns, keeping track of time, and sharing responsibilities provide structure, a fragile mental scaffolding that prevents despair from overwhelming the group. Nightmares, anxiety, and hypervigilance are constant companions. Predators, illness, and scarcity press at the edges of consciousness. Yet over time, your mind recalibrates. You learn to accept discomfort, anticipate danger, and prioritize survival. Mental endurance becomes as vital as muscle strength, perhaps even more so. Memory sharpens. You note which plants are edible, which predators patrol specific paths, and which portions of terrain offer shelter. Attention to detail is life itself. Mental mistakes are dangerous, yet the brain adapts, storing lessons, recognizing patterns, and predicting outcomes faster than ever before. Every error is a teaching tool, every observation a potential lifeline. Even hope is rationed carefully. You cannot afford optimism untempered by reality. But small sparks, fire glowing at night, water found in hidden streams, a child successfully trapping a rabbit, reignite persistence. The mind learns to celebrate subtly, quietly, and strategically, conserving energy and resilience for the next challenge. By dawn, the mind has shifted imperceptibly. You are sharper, more cautious, and more attuned to both threats and opportunities. You notice a predator in the distance, a patch of roots under ash, a movement in the gray horizon, and your mind registers it before panic sets in. Survival is mental endurance as much as physical. And as you huddle near the fire with the group, shivering, starving, and covered in ash, you realize the truth. The human mind is adaptive, stubborn, and clever. It finds humor in despair, patterns in chaos, and hope in the smallest victories. Even when the world seems determined to erase you, your mind ensures that humanity continues, not just alive, but aware, calculating, and persistently defiant. Necessity, as they say, is the mother of invention. In a world smothered by ash and cold, innovation isn't about glory, it's about survival. Every tiny adjustment, every improvised tool, every clever trick is a quiet rebellion against extinction. You discover quickly, ingenuity is just as essential as warmth, water, or food. It begins with the obvious. Fire must be maintained despite wind and wet ash. You lash together scraps of wood, wedge stones to block gusts, and layer dry moss to protect embers. The result is fragile, barely functional, but it works. You mutter quietly, yes, MacGyver would be proud if he were also starving. Humor remains vital, a mental salve for both fear and fatigue. Shelters are patched with what the environment provides. Leaves, branches, moss, and even animal hides from scavenged prey are woven together to reinforce walls, block wind, or create insulation. No structure is permanent. All are temporary, adaptable, and intentionally minimal. Survival is not about comfort, it is about clever exploitation of the resources at hand. Tools emerge from necessity. Sharp stones become knives. Twisted branches transform into digging implements. Simple traps and snares are crafted from cordage made of fibrous plants. Each creation is modest but functional, extending reach, improving efficiency, and increasing odds of survival. You catch yourself marveling quietly at the simplicity. So that's how humans invented civilization, by desperation and boredom. Water collection is a lesson in ingenuity. You devise methods to funnel rain, filter debris with cloth, and even thaw ice without wasting precious fire. Every improvement, no matter how minor, is celebrated quietly. Survival is incremental, and small innovations compound over time, turning desperation into strategy. Food preservation becomes crucial. You experiment with drying meat near the fire, burying roots in ash to protect them from cold, and using leaves as containers. These improvisations, though imperfect, allow the group to ration better, extending scarce resources and providing tiny breathing room in an otherwise merciless environment. Even clothing adapts. Ash and wind wear through fibers quickly, but you patch, layer, and improvise using animal hides, cloth scraps, and plant fibers. Every extra layer is a buffer against cold, every patch a triumph of cleverness over fragility. Humor slips in quietly. Fashion weak in ash? Absolutely killing it. Small jokes keep the mind from collapsing under relentless pressure. Coordination and strategy are innovations too. You devise schedules for fire tending, water collection, hunting, and scouting. Routes are planned to avoid predators, minimize energy use, and maximize safety. Communication evolves with signals, subtle gestures, and shared knowledge. Innovation is not only physical, it is social, cognitive, and adaptive. By nightfall, the group evaluates the day's innovations. Fires burn steadier, shelters hold better, traps are more effective, and water is managed more efficiently. You realize that ingenuity, improvised, small, and often absurd, is a critical survival skill. The difference between life and death is often a tiny, clever adjustment. And as you settle near the fire, exhausted but alive, you notice a quiet satisfaction. Innovation has not changed the world. It is still gray, cold, and threatening, but it has tilted the balance, however slightly, in your favor. Humanity persists not just through stubborn endurance, but through clever adaptation, small triumphs, and the relentless application of the mind to survival's cruel puzzles. Predators never truly left. The ash-choked world, cold and gray, only sharpened their instincts. You notice subtle signs first: footprints in ash, faint growls carried by the wind, shadows flitting across the horizon. Every rustle, every flicker of movement, is a reminder that survival is a negotiation with creatures just as determined to live as you are. The first encounter is close enough to be terrifying. You freeze, heart hammering, eyes scanning every edge of the gray landscape. A predator emerges, larger, hungrier, more cunning than the day before. Your group reacts instinctively: signals, hand gestures, whispers. Humor surfaces quietly. Yes, nothing like being stared down by death itself to start the morning. The joke is dry, almost absurd, but it keeps panic at bay. Hunting and scavenging now carry dual risks. While you search for food, predators are searching for you. Every movement is strategic. You calculate distances, consider escape routes, and weigh the risk of every choice. Even the wind seems to betray you, carrying scent to those lurking in the gray. Survival is a constant mental game, requiring vigilance, quick decisions, and a stubborn refusal to freeze entirely, literally and figuratively. Small encounters are tests of ingenuity. You construct simple alarms, strings of stones, small noisemakers, or ash-covered branches that reveal movement. Fires are tended not just for warmth but to deter predators, their smoke acting as both shield and warning. Each adjustment is minor but critical, a reminder that survival relies on observation, preparation, and a willingness to improvise. Predators are persistent. Tracks disappear under shifting ash, shadows distort in low light, and even familiar terrain becomes uncertain. You learn to anticipate behavior, recognize patterns, and predict movement. It is exhausting and relentless, yet each successful avoidance reinforces your survival instincts. You mutter quietly, "We're basically living in a real-life video game," minus the respawn button. Humor keeps your mind nimble, your focus sharp. Group cohesion becomes more essential than ever. The weak, injured, and exhausted rely on the vigilance of the stronger members. Coordinated movements, silent signals, and strategic positioning are the difference between life and death. Trust is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Each human becomes a tool, a shield, and a scout simultaneously, highlighting the brutal interdependence required for survival. Even small victories against predators carry immense weight. A successfully trapped animal not only feeds the group but confirms that vigilance, ingenuity, and coordination still work. The group celebrates quietly, knowing that each life saved today may influence survival tomorrow. Every avoidance of a predator is a quiet triumph, a reminder that humanity endures, adaptive and relentless. Nightfall intensifies threats. Predators are drawn to fires, to movement, to any sign of vulnerability. Your group rotates sentries, sharing watch duties, whispering quietly, and maintaining strict protocols. Sleep is shallow, vigilant, and interrupted, but survival demands it. Humor persists. Yes, sleep. That's optional when the wolves are doing rounds. The dark joke is necessary, comforting, and grounding. By dawn, the predators retreat, or at least reposition. You evaluate injuries, lost resources, and lessons learned. Each encounter sharpens skills, strengthens cohesion, and reinforces awareness. Humanity persists not because predators are absent, but because humans adapt, anticipate, and respond to threats with patience, ingenuity, and resilience. As you settle near the fire, shivering and ash-covered, you recognize the truth. Predators are relentless, but so is the human spirit. Every step, every observation, every improvised trap is a statement. Survival is possible, and extinction is not inevitable, not yet. And in this gray, wind-bitten, predator-haunted world, that stubborn defiance is enough to keep humanity alive. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, the world hints at change. The ash-laden sky begins to thin, revealing faint streaks of pale sunlight. The wind still bites, and the gray landscape dominates, but something shifts. Life, stubborn and quietly defiant, begins to edge its way back. You notice it in tiny signs: the faint green of moss, the trickle of clear water, the distant call of a bird that somehow survived. The group reacts cautiously. Optimism is measured, almost incredulous. Ah, sunlight. Fancy seeing you after all this misery. Humor surfaces quietly, a whispered rebellion against despair. You allow yourself a fleeting smile, though your mind immediately notes the precautions. Predators, unstable terrain, and scarcity haven't vanished. Survival is never guaranteed, and hope is fragile. Scavenging begins to yield more reliable results. Small plants poke through ash, roots taste slightly sweeter, and animal tracks increase in number. The group moves with cautious excitement, aware that recovery is uneven and temporary. Yet even the smallest abundance is celebrated quietly. A single bird trapped, a patch of edible moss, or a hidden stream provides a glimmer of reassurance. Life continues, and humans continue with it. Shelters are repaired and improved. With slightly more reliable resources, the group fortifies walls, adds insulation, and strengthens defenses against both predators and the elements. Even minor innovations feel more effective, more durable. You mutter under your breath, "Well, at least our homes might survive longer than our nerves." Humor remains essential, a fragile barrier against lingering despair. The fire burns steadier. Less ash falls, wind gusts are less violent, and fuel is slightly easier to gather. Even small adjustments in routine seem more efficient. The group begins to regain a rhythm, however tentative, that was lost during the harshest days of the volcanic winter. Each success reinforces vigilance, cooperation, and morale. Water, always precious, becomes marginally more accessible. Streams run clearer, frozen surfaces begin to thaw, and collection is less perilous. Each drop still carries weight, but small improvements allow for a fraction of mental relief. The group drinks carefully, rations strategically, and exchanges quiet smiles over the rare luxury of relative ease. Children notice the changes too. Their curiosity blossoms subtly, their movements become more confident, and their small successes reinforce the group's morale. Elders guide, instruct, and quietly acknowledge that humanity may finally be inching toward recovery. Every minor success becomes a lesson in adaptation and resilience. Predators are still present, but encounters become more manageable. Improved visibility, slightly warmer temperatures, and stronger group coordination reduce risks. Each evasion, each carefully planned hunt, is a reminder that while the world is still dangerous, humans are increasingly adept at navigating it. By nightfall, the fire illuminates not only faces but faint glimmers of hope. Ash still falls, cold still bites, and hunger persists, but the horizon has shifted. Survival feels possible in a slightly more sustainable way. The gray world remains imposing, but cracks of color, warmth, and life are emerging. As you settle near the fire, tired but alive, you realize that adaptation has brought reward. Humanity persists because of ingenuity, vigilance, cooperation, and resilience. The glimmer of hope is quiet, fragile, and easily extinguished, but it exists. And in this fragile spark, you recognize that extinction has been postponed once more, that life, stubborn and unyielding, continues its slow, deliberate march forward. The world has changed, though life persists stubbornly, quietly, and with subtle resilience. Ash still coats the landscape, the wind still bites, and hunger lingers in the corners of your awareness. But through struggle, ingenuity, and relentless persistence, humanity endures. You sit near the fire, observing the group, reflecting on the long, gray journey that brought you to this precarious moment. Each scar on a body, each exhaustion line on a face, tells a story of survival. You notice the subtle confidence in movements, the sharpened instincts, and the quiet understanding that life has been earned, day by day, breath by breath. Humor, dry and dark, surfaces again. We've survived lava, starvation, ash storms, and lions. Humans should really get a medal, or at least a spa day. The joke is thin, but laughter, even faint, is a victory in itself. The group has evolved into a resilient, adaptive unit. Every individual contributes, gathering, hunting, tending fire, watching for predators. Cooperation, once a luxury, is now instinctive. Every action is a calculated contribution to the survival of all, a small but significant defiance against extinction. You recognize that humanity survives not as isolated individuals, but as a network of shared effort, trust, and perseverance. Children have grown sharper, quicker, and more observant. They notice small changes in the ash, subtle shifts in predator behavior, and patterns in water flow. Knowledge, once fragile and tentative, now passes efficiently from generation to generation. Each lesson is an investment in the future, ensuring that survival is not merely a momentary victory but a continued inheritance. The environment, harsh as it is, has begun to yield small gifts. Faint green shoots appear, ice thaws incrementally, and small animals return to previously barren areas. Every glimmer of life strengthens morale, offering tangible evidence that the world, while still unforgiving, can be navigated and utilized. You reflect. Persistence, observation, and cleverness have earned these rewards. Night falls, and the fire glows with familiar warmth. Shadows dance on ash-laden walls, highlighting both fragility and strength. You consider the long nights endured, the relentless hunger, the constant vigilance against predators, and the creative solutions forced by necessity. Each challenge overcame feels monumental in retrospect. Survival has become both skill and art. Predators remain, hunger persists, and danger is ever present, but the group has learned to anticipate, respond, and adapt. Each day survived increases skill, confidence, and cohesion. Humanity has endured the brink of extinction not through chance alone, but through relentless application of intelligence, cooperation, and sheer stubbornness. You take a deep breath, inhaling smoke, cold air, and the faint scent of damp earth. Reflection is quiet. Survival is not glamorous. It is often tedious, uncomfortable, and brutal. Yet in the endurance, in the minor victories, and in the daily commitment to persist, humanity claims life once more. The gray world, harsh and indifferent, cannot erase this small but unyielding assertion. And as you settle near the fire, watching the group, listening to wind through ash-choked trees, you understand the truth. Humanity endures. Not perfectly, not comfortably, but persistently. Each breath, each heartbeat, each calculated action is a quiet defiance against the forces that sought to erase existence. Life continues, fragile but stubborn, a testament to adaptability, resilience, and the unshakable human spirit. Extinction was nearly achieved. Yet here you are, alive, observing survival, and carrying the legacy forward. The ash will fall, the cold will bite, and challenges will persist, but humanity endures. And that, in itself, is remarkable.